from the film files of SMW. The Oscars, Episode 4, Best Director. The nominees are Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, and Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. First on our list is Dunkirk. In this film, Christopher Nolan really strips down the war story, tells the bulk of his story with very little dialogue and no extra padding that so many war films have. This movie really has no exposition to it. Nolan really focuses on the characters much more than he focuses on the action. He puts a lot of importance on perspective and putting the audience in the moment in this film. I think the choice of never showing the enemy is really interesting. It really shows you the waiting of war, which I thought was really interesting because that's not something that you see a lot. Those scenes where these soldiers are just sitting on the beach or huddling in a boat. They're waiting to be saved and they don't know if they're going to be. They don't know what's going to happen next. He just shows that aspect of war so well in this film. And it's not something that I really think about when I think of war very often. So it was really cool to see that. I thought the chronology of this movie was so cool. Choosing to tell this story in 3 parts and choosing to interlace them the way that he did, I thought was so fascinating. I can totally see how for some people it could potentially be confusing, but for me it just captivated me even more. I loved seeing how each of the stories existed individually and then slowly seeing how they all interacted, coming back to shots that you've seen earlier but showing you them from a different perspective. You see the events of this movie happening from the perspective of everyone who's involved, and that's so cool. I came across this quote from Christopher Nolan from an interview that he gave. He said, "As a director, I try to show people things they've never seen before." He absolutely does that with this film. Next up is Get Out. This movie blew my mind. It's so interesting because it's like a political thriller with comedic elements and a couple heartwarming moments. Peele created like a whole new type of film with this movie, both through his direction and through his writing. We see almost everything through Chris's eyes. His perspective is always really clear. It's done in a way that we can't help but feel what Chris is feeling. This is really important because it helps you understand Chris's experience. One of the few moments that wasn't through his perspective was when he meets the parents for the first time. This is shot from kind of far away, sort of from the perspective of the groundskeeper. That has a really interesting effect on this moment. It's a very pleasant moment, but shooting it from far away kind of gives it this like eerie feel. Definitely plays towards the thriller side of the movie. Another choice that I think was really smart on Peele's part was revealing everything in very small doses. Again, it helps us understand Chris's experience. It helps emphasize the political themes, especially to audience members who have no experience with them themselves, like myself. I also think this movie is really great because Jordan Peele created something that is exciting and informative and something that will spark discussion. He raised some really important ideas in this film. I definitely felt like I came out of the movie wiser than when I went into it. He made me aware of my privilege without making me feel like I was a horrible person for it. It allows this movie to reach a bigger audience. I didn't feel excluded from the narrative at all. It feels like the movie was made for everyone. That's something that Jordan Peele has stated in interviews was something that he strived for, to make sure this was an inclusive film. And I think he did that really well. It's definitely a film that makes you think in like the best way. Really, it was just a mind-blowing film. Great work by Jordan Peele. Next up is Lady Bird. I love this movie. I friggin' love Greta Gerwig. I'm so happy she got this nomination. She's the 5th woman to ever be nominated for Best Director. Only one woman has ever won. Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker. So I'm so excited that Greta Gerwig is getting noticed for this and that this really like female empowering film is like being celebrated. That's exciting. One of the things that Greta Gerwig did so well in this film was that she was able to really capture the spirit of youth and the feeling of growing up and everything that comes with that, especially for a girl. So many coming of age films are about boys, and I don't know why I've never noticed this before, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was so excited by this movie. I could relate to it in a way that I hadn't been able to relate to a movie like this before. Also love the way that she shows and examines the mother-daughter relationship. I don't feel like I've seen another mother-daughter relationship like this, even though Lady Bird's relationship with her mom is vastly different than my personal relationship with my mom. There are still a lot of aspects of the relationship that I feel I can relate to, that I know my friends feel like they can relate to. I just think that it was a really honest portrayal. This film feels very nostalgic in like a great way, and not just from the fashion and the music. You can really feel Greta's spirit in it, and you can feel her creativity and her individuality, and that really makes this film beautiful. I think it's just really clear that this movie was made by people who are really passionate about the story that they were telling and the thing that they were creating. And that's one of the most exciting things about art, right? To create and to share your passion with other people. This movie is a great representation of that. I also love that love played a really big role in this movie, but it's not like some love story about her finding the right guy or anything like that. It's about her learning how to love and how to lose love, and about the different types of love there are in the world, and which types of love are really the important ones, which types of love are more fulfilling. You see so many different kinds of love in this movie. Mother-daughter love, father-daughter love, brother-sister love, friend love, relationship love, sex love, love for a place, love of life, the need for passion and creativity in your life. I just feel like this was a really relatable film, and I really loved it. And I think Greta Gerwig did an amazing job on this. I can't believe this is her writing and directing debut. She's brilliant, and I can't wait to see what she does next. The Phantom Thread. This movie deals with themes of high society egotism, masculinity, control, power dynamics, love. Paul Thomas Anderson has really created a new kind of love story here, but it was still just as endearing and just as romantic and just as sensual as mainstream love stories are. The amount of care and detail in this film is incredible. This film is all about the details. In interviews, Paul Thomas Anderson has talked about some of the similarities between him and his protagonist in this film. Similarities in work ethic and creativity and passion, not similarities in personality. And I think this film shows that really beautifully. You can see a lot of devotion and care in it. It almost feels as if the film was like carefully and painfully hand-stitched together. That's probably a total cliche to compare this film to what it's about, but I'm gonna do it anyways. An interesting tidbit I came across: he actually got the idea for this movie while he was sick, and his wife, Maya Rudolph, was caring for him, and the thought crossed his mind, I wonder if she wishes she could keep me like this just for a week or two, just as you see in Phantom Thread. Now, I just thought that was like a fun little fact. What an interesting place to get an idea from. And I feel like that goes to show how he wanted to show love from a different angle. This movie is a little different, but I personally really loved it. Last but not least, The Shape of Water. This is kind of this fantastical love story. It's kind of a Beauty and the Beast type tale, but it's more than that. I even feel like there are some political connotations in this. It's a look at the way we treat living creatures, both human and animal. He kind of examines mankind's tendency to take whatever we want because we have the power to take it, and therefore we think we have the right to do so. This movie is also surprisingly violent. I wasn't really expecting that. It's interesting to see the juxtaposition of like this kind of magical, almost fairy tale, and then these like very violent, gritty, scarier scenes. This is another movie that doesn't exactly fall into one specific genre of film. Kind of pulls from multiple genres. And Del Toro also presents some really interesting contrasts in this film. There's a really strong contrast between good and evil here. You kind of see each of them working towards this goal, and you see how they each struggle and how they each show strength. I feel like this movie presents some very familiar themes, but in a very new and different way. Guillermo del Toro took a risk with this movie, but I think it really paid off. I think he was able to tell a really beautiful story here. So now for my pick, I'm definitely going in between Jordan Peele and Greta Gerwig on this one. Every time I think about it, I kind of like talk myself into one of them, and then the next time I think about it, I talk myself into the other one. But I would like to note that both of these individuals are also nominated for Best Original Screenplay for these films. So my hope is that whichever one wins Best Director, the other one wins Best Screenplay. That would be ideal. I think when it comes down to it, I think I really want Greta Gerwig to win. I think I'm rooting for her a little more than I am for the others. My pick for Best Director this year will go to Greta Gerwig. And then my pick for Best Original Screenplay goes to Jordan Peele. As long as they're both acknowledged. I want them both to be acknowledged for creating wonderful movies. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!